Hello, unravelers. I hope you guys had a great week. You made it. It's Friday. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. What I want to talk about today is something that's been happening in real time. I've been following as best I can. It's just been hard to update on it just because of my schedule, but it concluded today, and I want to talk about it. We really like for our monsters to look like monsters, don't we? We want our monsters to have wild eyes and sharp, jagged teeth and maybe an erratic history of burning down sheds. I don't know. I guess it just makes it easier to sleep at night when we picture our monsters like that. It makes it a lot easier for us to say, like, ooh, no, I would never let that person anywhere near my family. You know what I mean? But what happens when the monster has, say, a sash? What happens when the monster has a perfect blowout, a crown, and like a high school transcript full of A's? What happens then? In January of 2024, in a very sleepy town called Americus, Georgia, a tragedy unfolded that broke the brain of absolutely everyone watching it unfold. An 18-month-old boy, healthy, happy, innocent toddler, was beaten to death inside of a college dorm room. The person that was in that room with him, not a stranger, not an intruder, his father's girlfriend. That's who was there. The reigning, in fact, Miss Donaldsonville. She was a nursing student of all kinds of students. And she was a girl who was supposed to be a role model. This girl's name is Trinity Madison Poague. And for the last 4 days, I have been as glued as I could be during my workday to the live stream trial, watching Trinity's defense team try to convince a jury that physics is a lie and that a 2-foot fall from a bed can sever a child's liver. Spoiler alert, the jury didn't buy it, and neither should you, in my opinion. This is all my opinion. This is just commentary, me talking, thinking out loud. All my opinion. Tell me yours. But today I just wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive because I did plan on covering the trial like day by day, but my schedule just didn't allow for it. And so I have spent a lot of hours watching, note-taking, and I feel like that shouldn't go to waste. And I feel like my people will want to hear about it. We'll go through the history, we'll go through some texts, we'll go through some Google searches, and we'll go through the days of this trial. And we will talk about how a beauty queen becomes a baby killer. So buckle up, babes. This one hurts. Let's unravel. Do me a favor. Do me a favor and excuse the extremely casual pajamas. Excuse the unkempt skin, ridiculous hair. I'm not done up. Most of the time I try. I know I don't always, but most of the time I try. But let me tell you guys something this week at work. What? Unreal. Not kidding. Unreal. You guys want to know what happened? I'm not kidding. A car drove through the lobby of my office. Just, I'm at work. You know what I'm doing? I'm taking care of humans. You know what I mean? Trying to provide a little holiday cheer from those who might not be feeling very well. And then a car. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I don't even have the energy to tell you with any enthusiasm that this is real life for me this week. Okay? So, with that being said, and that's That's just a small piece, but it was a crazy piece, but that's just a small piece of my week. So how was yours? How was yours? How was your work week? How was everything? Are you guys ready for Christmas? I have a 'Tis the Cereal season coming for you tomorrow. I think it's a good one. I hope it's a good one. I put a lot of work into it. But yeah, let's get into why we're here today. I do want to give a little bit of history so that we understand how we ended up in the courtroom in Sumter County in Georgia. And to do that, we do have to rewind a little bit to late 2023. Let's meet again Trinity Poague. Trinity Poague at the time of this incident was 18 years old. She was checking every single box on the Southern Success checklist. She was a freshman at Georgia Southwestern State University, also known as GSW. Just also gunshot wound. There's no gunshot wounds in this case, but when you talk about a lot of true crime, you hear GSW, that's what you think. But that's a college. She was beautiful. She was popular. She was ambitious. She had, as I stated earlier, very recently been named Miss Donaldsonville. This is a title that led her to be able to compete in the Miss National Peanut Festival. That's a yes. Yeah. And in her world, image was like currency. And then we have a man named Julian Williams. Julian Williams at this time is 23. He's a few years older than Trinity, obviously. He paints for a massive river construction. He does dams and stuff and bridges, stuff like that, right? But Julian did come with a +1. He had a beautiful 18-month-old baby boy named Jackson Drew Angeles. Him. The other side of the family apparently called him Romeo, but overall, affectionately, he was known as JD. Just look at that face. Look at that face. This is a baby who has no idea that he is apparently an inconvenience. But to Trinity Poague, as we would see throughout this trial, that's exactly what he was. Prosecutors would argue that Trinity very, very clearly and very obviously wanted a romance with Julian, but what she didn't want was the reality of Julian's life. She wanted date nights and dorm parties, but she didn't want diaper changes and crying fits. And instead of breaking up with this boy or setting some boundaries, we don't want to do that. She just kind of held it in and she let all of that resentment simmer. And when resentment simmers over a period of time and then meets in a small dorm room with thin walls and nothing for a toddler to do, it boils over. And that's what happened here, in my opinion. It took almost 2 years to get to trial. But this week on Monday, in December of 2025, the state of Georgia finally came for Trinity Poague. Let's just go by all my messy notes. Listen, full disclosure. Maybe some of my days and notes got mixed up because some of them I was taking on pharmaceutical rep stickies. Okay, because that's what I had available. All right. So I am not saying that every day that this is in chronological order or this is but this is the gist of the trial. I tried, guys, so hard, okay? But I think I got the gist of what went down in that Sumter County courtroom. All right, here we go. Okay, so the first official day of trial was on Tuesday, right? The 2nd of December. So we have prosecutor whose name is Louis Bud Lamb. No shade. He reminds me of Colonel Sanders. Every time this guy got up and started talking, even with the Southern accent and everything, he's from Georgia. And I just got Colonel Sanders vibes the whole time. It was adorable. Was I impressed the whole time? I can't say that I was, but I digress. That's neither here nor there. The case was presented. It was fine. So he gets up, okay? He's the district attorney for the Southwestern Judicial Circuit, okay? All right. He really doesn't go for a lot of theatrics. He just kind of goes, it goes for the jugular. He's like, this is what it is, right? His opening statement was kind of all about resentment. Lamb tells the jury she wanted the boyfriend, but she didn't want the burden. He promises in his opening statements to show that Trinity viewed this precious 18-month-old baby boy not really so much as a human being, but as an obstacle to like her happily ever after. Her defense attorney's name is Tim Gamble. He's got a really tough job, in my opinion. He can't deny, obviously, that this baby boy is dead. He also can't deny that Trinity was the only one there when this happened. And so he kind of leans into his defense of kind of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. You know what I mean? Create reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. Could have been this, could have been this, could have been this, could have been this. You know what I mean? I feel like that was kind of their whole defense was like, well, but it also could have been. It also could have been. It also could have been. Anyway. He argues Trinity is 18 years old. She's a kid herself. This was a tragic accident. The baby fell. Maybe she panicked. She didn't know what to do. And being a bad babysitter's not a crime. You know, that kind of thing. So anyway, we get to the father's testimony. Julian Williams testified on day one. Okay, day one, we had Julian Williams on the stand. And it was kind of brutal. Like he had to sit there and he had to look at this woman who he had dated, knowing that she is the reason, allegedly at this point, that her son is no longer with us. So he did testify that Trinity had called him while he was away at Walmart and Pizza Hut, that she did sound a little distressed. And the defense, of course, jumps on this. Defense is like, did she call you immediately? Julian says, yeah. I mean, I guess they want the jury to think at this point, like, why would a murderer call for help? That kind of thing. But yeah, actually, they would do that. Murderers do that a lot, especially when they realize the gravity of their actions. And maybe when they realize that perhaps they had just hit a baby so hard that they had stopped breathing. Self-preservation, in my opinion, is quite a powerful drug. So then as we go along in the trial, I mean, this is where that good girl image really kind of starts to disintegrate. The state actually calls Trinity's former roommates, Megan Pitts and Paris Permart. You know how you have like these group chats where you vent to your girlfriends or guy friends and you're just like, you know, you're just venting and like maybe nothing that you say is anything like meaningful, but you're just like letting it all out, blowing off all the steam. Okay, well, girl, imagine that group chat being read out loud during a murder trial, because that's what's happening here. Megan Pitts actually gets on the stand and reads a text that Trinity sent about JD, and it said, quote, "He hates me and I hate him," unquote. Should we analyze that? I hate him, right? If an 18-month-old baby hates me, and this is just me, I am a mother, but like in my head, I'd be like, oh my God, this kid hates me, bro. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I get him to like me? I'm going to bring him more lollipops. I'm going to bring him more, like, I'm going to tickle him, like, you know, like, it's like my brain is trying to figure out, like, oh my God, why is this kid like, why doesn't this kid like me? Like, what can I do? You know, I don't know. 18 months, you're like, you know, I mean, it's not hard, maybe, but like, there are things you can do. you know what I mean, to endear an 18-month-old child. You know? I feel like. Maybe that's just, I don't know. I feel like enough tickles, hugs, lollipops, kisses, smooches, all that cliche goofy baby stuff, like mama, like eventually like this kid will like you. Keep at it, girl. Have a little patience. That she didn't know that. No, she was just like, well, he hates me, so I hate him. Extreme. Calm down. He's a baby. He watches Coco Melon and he's still pooping in his pants. I mean, in fact, I might argue that 18 months old don't really have the emotional capacity to hate anyone. They might just be like, who are you? What are you? Because again, this wasn't like a super regular thing. In fact, JD spent most of his time with Julian Williams' sister. She was his primary caregiver. So like these visits were few and far between with Trinity. It was like he's seen her before, but he was probably still a little like, you know what I mean? Another text like the one was the one we touched on earlier that said, I want to love him, but instead I just feel like angry. To me, these aren't texts of just like a stressed out babysitter. She wasn't a babysitter. Julian was gone for literally 30 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? The stressed out text of a babysitter was like, oh my God, he won't lay down for his nap. What do I do? What music do I put on? What do I put on the TV? Like, how can I get this baby to take a nap? Like, what do I do? I don't know. You know what I mean? Anyway, then a Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent takes the stand and, oh yeah, I forgot. There's the Google searches. I love Papa Google. Anything that Google has to tell us, I'm here for it. So the GBI agent testifies that in January of 2024, now this is the month that JD lost his life, Trinity was searching for information on, quote, skull fractures and brain bleeds. Trinity, Miss Poague, Miss Donaldsonville, Miss Possible Contestant in the National Peanut whatever. What do we have to say about that? What are we doing? What's that about? Now, defense tried to say, and listen, valid. Defense tried to say she's a nursing student. Duh. She's studying. Right. She's studying skull fractures and brain bleeds in the middle of the night and then ends up alone with a child who suffered a skull fracture and a brain bleed. Sure, Jan. Although I will say, as a nursing student, I don't really remember Googling a bunch of weird stuff, maybe medical stuff, but not weird stuff. But doing this, what I'm doing right now, me talking to you about this, my Tis the Serial season, like even take last week's Tis the Serial season with Israel Keys, like the stuff I was Googling, even while I was doing it, I was like, oh brother, this will not look good in the event of my passing. Or like, I don't know. I was just like, if there's ever any reason for anyone to look at my Google searches and I'm looking and Israel Keys and BTK and all these cases and all of like, it doesn't look good. So I get sometimes when I hope I have somebody in my corner who's like, hold on a second, like she did this thing on YouTube. There's an explanation for this, right? And so while I hope I have someone in my corner like that, and her defense attorney being that person, it's just, can we find out like in what part of her studies she was? Because nursing school has a very strict syllabus, like very strict. Like we can find out if like what she was like studying is relevant to those searches whatsoever. We can find, that's easy. We could find out. I don't think they went that far, but anyway. So, and we get to the day when the medical examiner takes the stand. And then this is where the accidental fall theory kind of just goes to die. It doesn't happen. Dr. Jill Olick takes the stand. She is the one who performed the autopsy on JD, and the defense asks her, Miss Olick, Dr. Olick, could a fall from a 2-foot bed cause the injuries? And she says, absolutely not. There's no way. Don't even try it. She then goes on to detail the injuries. Trigger warning, okay? Our beautiful Jackson Angelus, 18 months old, suffered the following injuries: severe brain bleed, severe subdural hematoma. This requires massive rotational force, like being shaken violently or being thrown, according to her. He had a skull fracture, not a hairline fracture, which a fall might cause, right? But a serious break in the occipital bone. So much so that in the toddlers, they have those I can't remember what they're called, but they're like literal, like kind of sutures in the skull that are still forming. It caused those to like separate. And then I want to focus on JD's liver. The liver is very deep inside of your body, and it's very, very well protected. By your rib cage, by fatty tissue, it's very well protected in there. To lacerate a liver, you need like compression, right? Like a stomp or a kick. You need the kind of force that you see when like a child would be getting hit by a sedan going 30 miles an hour. Like, it takes a lot of force to lacerate a liver, which is why we see them so frequently in motor vehicle accidents. The defense tried to suggest that he might have fallen on a hard object or like a toy. Medical examiner shut that shit down. The force that is required to lacerate this child's liver was intentional, high velocity, and brutal. You also had medical professionals saying that like the hematoma on the occipital part of the skull, it was so like like you could press on it, you could feel like the blood that was forming pooled in the back of this baby's skull. And medical professionals would also testify that this is an injury that would immediately cause change in behavior, awareness, in orientation. Motor skills would be affected, speech would be affected, all of these things, right? So up until this point, you have all of these people, Julian's father included. He even provided video that Trinity had sent him of the Saturday night before when he had fallen asleep. And it was of Trinity playing with Julian, like holding his hand, like pulling on his hand, ha ha ha, and he's holding his sippy cup and he's drinking his sippy cup. And all of these things took place at like 1 a.m. the night before. He was totally fine. He was totally fine. And once he got to the hospital, he was not fine. And this happened in the 30-minute window when Julian Williams left that dorm room and returned to find his son JD unresponsive. And the boy, post-mortem, during the autopsy, there were just multiple bruises on his face, on his head, on his cheeks, and they weren't old bruises. Like this child suffered, and it is believed that he suffered these injuries in the 30 minutes. There were roommates that testified that he was crying, screaming, and then very suddenly that crying and screaming stopped. I waited. I was watching this trial and I waited. I was waiting for all of the evidence to come out. I was waiting because the main defense, while they were throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, right? The main defense was that like these injuries, I think what they were implying was that these injuries could have happened before Julian and JD ever arrived to the dorm. But by all accounts, even by the roommate's testimony, JD was fine late into that evening. Even by Trinity's own accounts, JD's dad, Julian, had passed out. She claims he was drunk. He had a problem with alcohol, all that stuff. But even by that account, girl, you said he was passed out. Your roommate saw him at like 11 p.m. that night, or, heard him, it's not adding up. He was fine. He was fine until Julian left that dorm room. Anyway, this brings us to today. The state rests their case. The defense does call a few character witnesses only, basically people to say that Trinity was a nice girl, Trinity was a good girl, Trinity was in beauty pageants, and yada, 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 right? Did Trinity take the stand? No, she did not. And thank God for her lawyer's sake she didn't, because I hated him. Or, all those text messages are very hard to explain away on cross-examination. Prosecutor Lamb brings it home. He does bring it home here. Here's the timeline. 12 p.m., dad leaves, baby is fine. These are not exact times, but this is a general timeline. 12:15-ish p.m., Trinity is texting hate messages about this child, and 12:30 p.m., baby is unresponsive. Dad finds him limp in girlfriend's arms after returning with pizza and Walmart bags. And the baby has severe subdural hematoma and a lacerated liver. There is only one person in the state's eyes who could have done this. The defense, of course, argues in their closing statements, reasonable doubt, say no one saw her do it. Okay. They say it's a tragedy. It was an accident, not a crime. Okay. Also, okay. The jury deliberates today for about, I think it was like 2 or 3 hours. That is really fast. We saw this with Karina Cooper, which was like 4.5 hours. That's really fast for a murder trial. That means to me that they really didn't have much to argue about in this case. The verdict. The verdict is read. Count 1, malice murder. Not guilty. The jury wasn't convinced that she planned the murder ahead of time. They believed that she snapped. And so in turn, count 2, felony murder. Verdict, guilty. This is the big one. This one means she committed a felony, which was like count 3 or one of the other counts that followed, aggravated battery, which is a felony. And in committing that felony, a death occurred. In the eyes of the law, that's the same. It's the same. The aggravated battery count, obviously, we just said guilty. And the cruelty to children count, verdict, guilty. This judge did not play and he did not wait. Not for a single second. He didn't need a pre-sentencing investigation to know that a woman who ruptures a toddler's liver belongs in a cage. The sentence, life in prison, plus 20 years to serve concurrently. There was a big debate about whether that sentence should be served consecutively or concurrently. Consecutively would mean that she would serve life in prison, but then when she was about to be up for parole, that 20 years would kick in and she would have to serve that after, right? So that would have meant essentially life without parole at her age, right? But defense convinced the judge to give her life without parole with 20 years concurrent, which actually does mean that eventually Trinity Poague will be up for parole. She's 20 years old today. She will be 50 years old before she even gets a chance to ask a board to let her out of prison. She traded that crown for a jumpsuit. And for what? She traded all of her college years. She traded all of her 20s, all of her 30s, all of her 40s, all because, why? She couldn't handle a crying baby. All because she was what? Jealous of a toddler. There is no happy ending here whatsoever. Julian Williams has to live the rest of his life knowing that for those 30 minuscule minutes, he left his son with a monster. And JD Angelus never even got to see his second birthday. And Trinity, well, Trinity's gonna have a lot of time to think while she's sitting in her cell about the hate that she was receiving from an 18-month-old boy. Like, she's going to realize that the burden she wanted to get rid of just became the burden that she will now carry for an eternity. And I hope she does carry that. I hope she does. This case is a reminder, as so many of these cases are, that you really never do know what's behind that smile, what's behind that sash, what's behind that crown, what's behind that Instagram filter. Violence doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes it looks like the girl next door. And I really hope that sweet baby Jackson can rest in peace now that there is justice in this case. What are your opinions? If you guys followed this case, if you watched the trial or just read about it, what do you think? The defense played very strongly into the 18-year-old thing. Like, oh, she was just a kid. She was just 18 herself. Yeah, I was 18 once too, and I was overwhelmed by motherhood at that age already. And it's not in everybody. It's not in most of us. But I think if it's in you, it's in you. And I could be wrong about that. I really could be. But I just don't think that that's an excuse. But let me know your thoughts down below. While you're at it, give the video a like. Go ahead and subscribe. A lot of you that are watching, I'm seeing this. Okay? A lot of you that are watching are not subscribing. Just girl, click the button. Hit subscribe. I'm here for you as much as I can be. And I love this community that we're building. You guys are so supportive and so encouraging. And I love you so much. So that wraps up the beauty queen murder trial, Trinity Poague. We have 'Tis the Serial season tomorrow. I'll have that up and out for you guys. Until I see you again, thank you for being here with me. I love you so much. Please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.